Hi, and welcome to the Selling in the Motor Trade podcast in association with CarWow, the online car-changing destination. Together, we share tips and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your department, dealership, or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett, or some of you might already know me as Skippy. Firstly, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Hi, welcome to another episode of Selling in the Motor Trade. Now, this is a continuation on everything after sales, and we've been talking about the 5 touch points that a service advisor needs to consider when they're dealing with a customer with red and amber work and upsell. And I'm joined again with Darren Bedford. Welcome back, Darren.
Hi, Simon. Good to be here. We're rocketing through these, aren't we?
We are. Now, listen, for some of the people who may have missed the first 2 episodes, we're talking about the 5 key, touch points. Can you just quickly refresh those 5 steps that a service advisor needs to consider dealing with a customer in the service department?
Yeah, sure. We really use these 5 key touch points as the influencers for the amount of revenue that you're going to get on the day, and also the customer satisfaction and service. So it all begins with the booking, and we link the booking in with the pre-call. We then have the morning drop-off where the customer brings the vehicle into us. We're then going to contact the customer with a vehicle health check, which is what we're going to do today. The final part of that is going to be handing back the vehicle, and then we'll have some sort of follow-up action there to make sure everything went well on the day for the customer. So they're really the 5 key interactions or touch points that influence everything that you do in the department on a daily basis, each customer.
I suppose the important thing is, I know I'm a salesperson, and there's going to be lots of service managers here going straight to this episode saying, hey, the guys can't sell red and amber work. Yeah. Let's just go to the call. How do they do the call? Yeah. But I suppose it's fair to reiterate that the call preparation is key, isn't it? You need to get those first 2 steps right. And I'd really urge people to go back and look at step 1 and step 2 before you go straight into how to make the call.
Absolutely, Simon. And, I'd go on and just stress that we're just scratching the surface on some of these areas as well, with even in those ones. But it's so important to get the balance right of the preparation beforehand. One of the ones that we discussed last time, for instance, was, if you've not got a number or a contact method that you can get hold of that customer on the day, because potentially it might be a different day for them, it doesn't matter how good your techniques are, you're not going to connect with the customer. So it's really, really important. The planning is everything, and then there's the delivery after that we're going to look at today.
Well, let's dive straight into it, okay? Because I know some people here are saying, like, come on, give us the juice. Tell us how to make this call there. So can we start straight away and say, how do we structure this call? What should be in the call? What should we cover to convert more red work?
Well, I think there's a few things that, not to take for granted, but we just need to be mindful of. When we speak to a customer in the morning, we need to be in a similar vein when we talk to them on the phone, when we pick up the call to them later on. So we don't want a situation in the morning where we're struggling to have a conversation, and then we pick up the phone and we're, hi, how are you? Really good to speak to you, and all of those sorts of things. So we've got consistency, we've got enthusiasm, all those bits that are going to help you there. But I would also say it's planning your delivery as well. Too many times I capture situations going on where if we've not fully explained something, it's very difficult for the customer to make an informed decision, and then potentially what happens is they take an ignorant risk. So we want to structure what that call looks like, really, in terms of what have I got to talk to that customer about. I would strongly recommend that you do it line by line, okay, and you seek approval on each item before moving to the next one, because when you have a larger vehicle health check to go through, other than that, you'll end up going through 5 or 6 items, come up with a huge amount, and then it almost just leaves the situation where the customer doesn't really know what to approve and what not to approve, and kind of leaves everything as a result of it. So I would much rather work through line by line on those and make sure we got clarity on each of those. But ostensibly, really what we want to do is go back over what the conversation that we left the customer with when they walked out. So if you remember back to last session, the last thing we left them with was, hey, look, Mr. Customer, we'll be doing a complimentary vehicle health check. Most of the items, they're going to be green, they're going to be good to go. If there's any amber items, we're letting you know they might not make it to the next service. But hey, if there's any red items, I'll be straight on the phone because we need to sort those out. So we leave that. We then pick up the call from a vehicle health check, and it makes it dead easy to go, morning, Simon. Just got your vehicle health check back. Great news is, as we thought, most of those items, they're green, they're good to go. Hey, listen, there's a couple of amber items. They're tyres. I'll talk to you about that when you come down later. But there's a red item that we must sort out. It's a tyre. You've worn it all the way down to 2.8 millimetres. Doesn't mean a lot to most of my customers, but the legal limit's 1.6. So that gives you less than the thickness of a credit card before that vehicle's tyre becomes illegal. Now, the great news is Andy's got one of those tyres, and we can get that fitted for you today. Would you like me to go ahead and get Andy to do it while it's on the ramps? So we can deliver a nice, succinct explanation of what needs to be done and ask for the business at the end of it.
Right, okay. So can you just take us through tyres right from start to finish? So let's say that you've got, I don't know, 2.8 mils on the tyre.
Yep.
We'll take that figure there, okay? How is the service advisor structuring that call? Because you mentioned the thickness of the credit card, not
Yep.
percentages. Can you take me from start to finish on how you would recommend someone tries to get this up? The reason why I say that is tyres, for me, is one of the first defection points. When a customer goes to the independents, the Freds in the shed. So often we believe it's when the warranty runs out, and of course it can be. But I think tyres is one of the things, if we deal with it in the wrong way, that's where a customer goes to the quick fits of the world and we lose that sale. Lose that customer, actually.
Yeah, you're dead right. I mean, one of the things about most of these businesses, their marketing machines are colossal. So the minute you've gone in and put a tyre on your car, they'll know when that vehicle's due a service and an MOT, and you'll be, bombarded with information about various offers that look, sometimes too good to be true. So you're absolutely right. It opens up that floodgate there. Tyre-wise, you're dead right. Is also a defection point, and what we look at there is the need from a customer's perspective to compare. That's often the case. When I brought my vehicle in, there's a good chance that I don't know how much a tyre should be for that car in the current marketplace or anything.
Yeah.
So if somebody's delivering the price of a tyre, it could be the cheapest in the world, and I wouldn't even know that was the case. So my instant thing is, well, that's their price. Well, maybe I need to compare elsewhere. One of the little tips and tricks that we do there is actually to incorporate the prices of local competitors into the explanation.
Yeah.
Because that can also put the customer in a position where it gives them the easy choice to make a decision. So I'll give you an example perhaps on that one. What I might do with that one is go through the same thing. Hi, Simon, just coming back to you as I promised I would. Most of those items, they're green, they're good to go. That's fantastic. There's a couple of amber items. It's a couple of tyres. I'll talk to you about that when you're down. But I need to talk to you about your front driver's side tyre. You've worn it all the way down to 2.8 millimetres. The legal limit's 1.6. Okay, it doesn't mean a lot to most of my customers, so we tend to just let them know it's less than the thickness of a credit card before that tyre is illegal. Now, the great news is that tyre's in stock at £200, and I can get Andy to fit that while it's on the ramps today. Just so that you know, I've also taken the liberty of checking a local tyre supplier, XX.
A quick fit or whoever it is.
Yeah, or whoever. And their tyre is actually £210. But what I do know is often they'll charge you for disposal of the casing or balancing when you get down there. So would you like me to go ahead and get Andy to get that tyre fitted while it's on the ramps today?
Yeah, we're going to talk about objection handling and techniques in a second as well. But there's something else I've noticed with some dealerships. I want to get your view on it. Yes, we've got the tyre that's on the car at the moment, or the same tyre that Volvo recommend, the Continental, the Dunlop. I've noticed some service advisors want to go into the lower cost alternative to start with. And I kind of get it. I've had some service advisors say, oh, Simon, you don't understand. In this area, no one will put a premium tyre on, okay? Because the quick fit down the road there, they'll be putting on Hancooks or something like that. I want to get your view on this. I always think if you start with the tyres that's on the car, if a customer gives you the objection, you've got somewhere you can come down to. If you start with that mid-range tire, actually the tire you come down to is some sort of Lung ditch finder. I can never
Yeah.
keep up with the name of some of these tires that come through, which I really wouldn't want to put that on any of our customers' cars because the safety of that tire is the stopping distance is not going to be the best. What's your view? Do you go in at the premium tire first, even though you're not going to get that? So,
Yeah, and I don't think that to say you're not going to get it. It is a broad statement to say
mm,
that you will
true.
get it or you won't get it. What we learn very quickly when we do this sort of job is that some people will swear by a particular brand of tire and never deviate from that. And what I always come back to is actually as a retailer, we're at the premium end of that marketplace. So if we're not offering the premium tires that should be going on there, then there's something a little bit wrong. We should be saying this is the Michelin so and so that matches your car. Because if you look at all of the tire information that's out there, just about every manufacturer out there recommends that you match those tires where possible. Certainly pairs and things like that as well.
Oh,
So,
oh, you mean pairs per axle, don't you?
yeah, pairs
Yeah.
per axle. Yeah. So, it also makes common sense that if you've got one brand of tire on there, there's less chance of putting something on there that's going to contradict with it or not work at work as well. And these tires now are really complex pieces of engineering. Long gone are the days that they're, let's put a remold on it or something down those lines. We're driving these vehicles as well at, majority of time at much higher speeds.
Mm.
We're driving them in conditions that vary from one day. You can end up in a situation where it's, a few degrees above, and then next it's sort of 5 degrees below. So the range that those tires can operate in, the way that they work, it's all quite an important choice for some people. And again, it's an old adage in our industry, but it's the only four parts of the car that are in contact with the road, Mr. Customer, was always a favorite, explanation when we were talking about tires.
Many years ago, in a previous life, I went on one of these courses where they scared you with the different tires, stopping distances, and
Yeah,
winter tires and how they work and so forth. And someone's definitely put the chip in me. Put the best tire you can on the car
yeah,
because stopping distances, handling, road noise. I mean,
yeah,
service advisors, listen to this. You will hear so many times that someone's put a mismatched tire on and you get that resonance noise and I think
yeah,
something's wrong with the car. It's just down to the tires and what they fit. And I've got
yeah,
a funny story. My 18-year-old son, he saved up money for his little Citroen C1. I mean, this car is a 2013. Okay, I mean the price of the car is not worth a lot, but hey, he saved his money up. That's his little car. He's putting some tires on the other day. I said, mate, don't play around with tires. Okay. Don't be putting those on. So it's a quick fit retailer. Sorry, my clients listen to you, but my son did go to a quick fit retailer. And I said, mate, just put the Pirellis on there. Now, here's the funny side of it. He's in there, he's putting four Pirellis on this little Citroen, which is probably worth more than the car, right? Um, but the young lad come out to fit the tires, and he actually overheard him say to his boss, are these Pirellis going to the Citroen? Are you serious? Okay, it was almost my son now felt to feel almost silly for putting those tires on it. But you know what? They're the only thing that's going to stop him in an
yeah.
emergency situation.
Yeah. We
And
do take it for granted, we talk about the distances and we will come on to that. It's very easy to get blasé about how much tread is left. And this is why we use the credit card, because visually everybody knows what the credit card is. You've got an idea in your head straight away, the thickness of that, because we think pictorially. Whereas when you're talking about 1.6 millimeters or 3 millimeters, it's not common in the language. I mean, we did decimalization many, many years ago, probably too far to remember now, but people still talk about feet and inches and bits and pieces. We don't sort of shimmy a cupboard in and go, oh, just won't fit in by 3.5 millimeters there. It's always a different grading system that we've been used to. We've had generations that have been taught at school millimeters, but then have to learn to communicate with their parents, so they have to learn the feet and inches as well. So I just think for the avoidance of and clarification, giving them, say, something like that credit card, just instantly, people, if they
the
don't
mind
know
picture.
what
Yeah.
6 millimeters looks like, they now know what the credit card looks like.
So people think about a credit card. The actual card itself is 1 millimeter.
Yep.
The bumps on the credit card is zero point 0.4 of a millimeter.
Yeah.
So for people listening to this, if someone's got 3 millimeters of tread left on the tire, the legal limit in UK, Ireland is 1.6. Around the world, if it's something different, I know in Germany it's a 3 millimeters is what they will is the legal limit. Okay, so it's 1.6 in the UK and Ireland. Okay, so that actually means at 3 millimeters, you've only got the full thickness of a credit card till that tire's illegal. Actually, if the tire's been worn down to 2 millimeters, it's only the thickness of the bumps on the credit card until that tire's illegal. I just really like your mind picture there, where Darren, people can actually get that and say, "Oh my goodness, that's not a lot." So Darren, I do like this idea of these mind pictures because it really does cement it for the customer. But can you talk me through about like the double-decker buses, extra stopping distances? Because I think that really resonates with someone, for a customer.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And, buses, again, people can picture immediately the sort of distance and size of those. So it's very visual, isn't it, in terms of an explanation. What they looked at 70 miles an hour, if you
What's that,
had
about
2 millimeters,
120 kilometers, I
120
think, something like
kilometers,
that. Yeah.
roughly, yeah.
Yeah.
It's about the only one that's right bang on at the same amount. Yeah, so if you're driving at that sort of speed and you and then went into an emergency stop and started to brake hard and go into a skid, the distance that you would travel with 2 millimeters of tyres is anything close to 10 double-decker buses.
Wow, I love
If you
that.
had
10
three
double-decker
millimeters,
buses. 10
10,
double. If
yeah,
you just picture 10 double-decker buses, that's huge, isn't
that's
it?
your stopping distance. Yeah, it's quite scary, isn't it? But then if you look at the improvement of that, if you take that back to a 3 millimeter
Yeah.
tyre, then that brings that right down to 5 double-decker buses as a stopping distance. So, and this is what they effectively said, and the curve literally drops off. For those listening on a podcast, it's very difficult to explain the curve, but it drops away dramatically from 3 down to the legal limit in its performance, because
Yeah.
it just doesn't have the ability to work in the same way. And that's compounded if it's wet, because it doesn't then have the ability to disperse the water out of it as well. So, you know,
Yeah.
again, unfortunately, where we're filming this, that's pretty much our summer, winter, and every
Yeah.
other season is, combination of sunny roads, nice dry roads 1 minute, and then soaking wet the next. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just not worth compromising. And as you alluded to previously, in Germany, they've already raised the limit. It's been that way for a long, long period of time.
Yep.
It's got to be above 3 millimeters. It's in our mind that we've got extra time. It's in our mind as a service advisor, I think, sometimes when, it's just gone into red, they've got a bit of time to sort that out then. In fact, I heard a call, and I think I might have even talked about it previously, but where a service advisor had phoned somebody and said, your tyres been worn down to 2.5 millimeters. And the customer went, well, what's the legal limit? 1.6 millimeters. Oh, I've got a bit of time then, haven't I?
Yes.
Because again, that principle of, we don't pictorially think that's less than a millimeter of tread, one good stop, and that's been rubbed off. So,
Well, listen, you're talking about the thickness of a credit card, and we really do like that because there's that mind picture like the buses. Are you suggesting that
yeah.
you don't use percentages worn anymore? Because again, most people would have heard of the percentages worn. If you can take us through that and just get your views on it, do you teach both percentages worn?
Yeah, I think in my experience, why I've tended to go to the credit card side of things now as a focal point is this. It works very, very well, percentages, when you get down to 2 millimeters, where don't quote me, but I think it says it's something like 94% worn.
Mhm.
So it's kind of gives you a good strength at that point. But in reality, I don't think that's where most service advisors struggle. I think most service advisors, if they're going to struggle a little bit on tyres, it tends to be on the bigger or slightly higher treads, the 2.3s, the 2.4s, 2.5s, and upwards. Where then I think at just under, I think at 2.9 millimeter, it's something like 76% worn. Well, 76% doesn't actually sound, I don't think, as urgent as we need to do something about this. We don't use 75% of our liquid hand soap, pick it up and go, that's finished, let's
Mm.
get a new one out. What we tend to do is we put some water in it, slosh it around, and we've got more soap. It's one of those kind of things that I think we've got to get everything out of it to get value. Interestingly enough, on the course, we do look at the cost saving of sticking with a tyre. So we look at a tyre at 2.9 millimeters and how much extra use you could get out of that tyre by running it right the way down to 1.6 millimeters. And an average sort of tyre, you're going to be looking at saving yourself something like 10, 15 pounds, even if you ran it in sort of controlled environment right the way down. But and I know the risk of somebody getting caught by going past that 1.6
Yeah,
millimeters is phenomenal.
yeah,
I mean, it's different everywhere, but in the UK, you can be fined up to £2,500 and 3 points on your license per tyre.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so technically, you could lose your license
It,
on four tyres.
yeah, you're right. We talk about the credit card and mine pictures. The percentages, it's a while since you've taught those as well, because I was just doing maths in my head or trying to remember what it was. So listen,
Yeah.
at 2%, it's 94% worn out. You're right that. But at the 3 millimeters, okay, so I even said it wrong then. At the 3 millimeters, it was 78% worn out, if I
Yeah, yeah,
remember correct. But again,
yeah,
that's the one I always struggled with. When it's 78% worn out, I just love your credit card approach. Okay, you've
yeah.
only got the thickness of credit card till that tie's illegal. And again, the fines there. Actually, having said that, let's talk about some objection handling there, because telling people about the fines, are we just scaremongering? How do you deal with the customer who says, you know what, I'll get back to you. I'll leave those tires. They'll be fine. How would you deal with that?
Well, again, this is where it depends on how you've delivered. Because one that I do like is cost or time.
Hmm.
Hey, listen, when you say you want to come back to me, is that based on the cost or the time of that repair? Okay. Because I do want to specify, if we've said we can go ahead and get that fitted today, are they worried about whether they're going to get the vehicle back, etc., or is it a monetary related? Now, a lot of people listening to this will go, well, it's money. Okay.
Yeah.
It may well be, but it gives you the ability then to hone in on what that issue is, and then perhaps use some of that comparison information there to say, hey, listen, it sounds like it's a little bit more than you were thinking the time was going to be. Can I just tell you, I've taken the liberty of checking with Quick Fits locally, and their tyre is X, and we can then go into a handling of that situation. What you have to remember is once you've handled it, you have to then go back and close. Okay,
Hmm.
i.e., you have to ask for that business again. Because we hear often people come up with very good reasons, and rightly so, of why it makes sense to do it. But if you just fail to ask for the business, you're probably just going to end up in a situation where you've given them a good reason, but they leave it anyway and go past. The problem with that is nobody phones you back up and says, hey, listen, I've done my shopping around. Actually, you're £10 more expensive, but it makes sense to get them done with you. Go ahead. They'll end up taking the car away from you, driving out of your dealership. And as I always say, when we sit in these lovely dealerships, does anybody want to actually come down, spend the day getting their car serviced with you, drive out from your site to another place to get tyres fitted where they're going to wait for a minimum of an hour? They're going to get a cup of Clicks coffee, maybe in a greasy, oily settee that they can sit and watch while their vehicle's cranked up on two axle stands or trolley jacks or something, and the tyres are replaced before then completing what they need doing? And the answer's got to be no. They want to get it all done. We're a one-stop shop. They want to get it all done with you, but they just have to see that the value is right and they're not paying through the nose for it. And that's again where I would often say in the objection handling to include prices, even if they're slightly more cheaper
Hmm.
somewhere else. I'd still talk about that price because people will pay a lot for convenience.
Yeah.
It will understand that £10 or £15 it might be more expensive. If you look at the variations in fuel from a motorway service station to maybe a local supermarket, people are paying 15, 20, £30 more per fill up to get their fuel from a motorway service station for convenience. So they'll sure pay it on a tyre. Their concern is more that they're going to buy it off you for £250 and they're going to find it somewhere else for maybe 150. Now, that isn't going to happen.
Well, what I love for service advisors, in the UK now, and sorry for people around the world listen to this at different places. You'll have similar places you can do this. I love having quick fit on the service advisor's computer, have it
Yep.
minimized there. They'll spit out a price very quickly, and for a few reasons. Number one is quick fit. So often when you put the registration number in the car, it comes up with the cheaper tires to start with before it goes into the branded tire, the tire that's probably on the vehicle. But also, it helps for a service advisor to realize actually we're not that far away. Because so often when service advisors think we're expensive, it's because we've quoted the Continental, the Bridgestone, the Pirelli. And the customer said, oh, I can get it from Black Circles for half price. But again, it is not the same tire. It is the Arrow. It is the something else. You're not comparing apples with apples. And I really do believe for service managers listen to this, I love service advisors to have that on their screen just to convince themselves. Because you know what, Darren, if a service advisor thinks, come to servicing the air conditioning. We have so much of a hit rate in dealership when we're explaining to a service advisor exactly why an air conditioning should be serviced. When we understand that the gas carries the oil around to lubricate the compressor. If the gas leaks out, there's nothing to lubricate the compressor. And the
Yep.
compressor is the most expensive part of the system. When a service advisor understands it, I think that belief comes across to the customer.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I'd say the opposite as well is the case. If they don't, it's very, very easy for a customer to pick that up through the words, the terminology, and things that they use. You know, it creeps into their language if the confidence isn't there of actually not sure going to be looked after here in terms of the price. It sounds like somewhere else is always cheaper. Well, then I'll go off and try and find somewhere that is cheaper.
Listen, there's so many objection handling techniques we train on today's service advisor,
Yep.
and we use different things for different parts of it. But I suppose for tires, hey, Mr. Customer, that does surprise me. Only having the thickness of the credit card until that tire's illegal, not only are you doubling your braking distance on that wet road, okay, not only is it 10 or 5 double-decker buses extra stopping distance, but the government's changed the maximum fine to £2,500 per tire. Hey, can I just ask you, is it the cost of the tire, of that tire, or the time frame that you're not sure about? Because time frame, of course, they're thinking, oh, I'll get another 3 weeks out of it. I'll get another month out of it.
Yep.
Okay. And then I love to, well, please bear in mind, Mr. Customer, that's for the same tire that Jaguar recommends. That's the same tire that Hyundai recommends. And then by all means, in this case, you say, hey, listen, on this occasion, why don't I look at a lower cost alternative? Or on this occasion, why don't I see if we can match that quick fit price? If I can get my service manager to match that quick fit price, shall we get Andy, the technician, get that sorted for you? I suppose if they start with the premium tire, if they
Yep.
start with the quick fit tire, they can always come down
Of course they can,
somewhere
yeah. Yeah,
to
they've got
satisfy.
alternatives. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. I suppose it's talking about the language we're using there, aren't we? Okay. And you always say there's a certain language you
Yeah.
need to use to assist the customer in understanding the difference between red and amber work. Can you give some examples where language has been used correctly and maybe incorrectly, what you hear day in, day out in dealerships?
Yeah, definitely. Look, in themselves, some of these words work in both environments. Okay, I don't think that they're necessarily bad words, but when you use them in both a red category and an amber category, you create confusion because we don't clearly explain what the situation is. And the one that I often find is either advise or recommend. So when it's red, you know, Andy, our technician recommends you do something about that fairly quickly. And then there's a couple of amber tires. Well, we'd recommend that you did something about those. You know, you got a bit longer with those. And if you keep using the same terminology in those different brackets, for want of a better description, you end up in a situation where it almost takes the urgency off the bits that you do need an answer for. So again, you'll know from the explanation of the vehicle health check, we always talk about the red items, so they need sorting out today. If you can keep that coming through in the language that you use, then it clearly identifies. And what I always get across to the service advisors is not you spending a customer's money. The customer has to be able to make an informed decision from what you say. because it's in red, it's nothing to do with you. It's not you forcing the customer to take that item. It's you as the expert explaining that that needs to be done. If the customer chooses still not to get that done, we can't do anything about it. We can't make people, because it's red, buy those items. But we clearly need to show the importance of it. There's another one that quite often comes out as well with things like Andy, our technicians found, bang, 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 and runs in. And if you can imagine, this is where the system does sometimes get shortcutted. The customer dropped off in the morning. Nobody really explained the vehicle health check. Half an hour later, somebody's on the phone to them going, "Oh, Simon, got your car here. Just want to talk you through your vehicle health check. There's a load of red items there, this. And then asking for that money straight away. The customer wants to know in the back of their mind what they booked it in for.
Mm.
They're not, you've gone, I found all of this work on your car. But me as a customer, I booked it in for a service and MOT. So again, I would always urge you as a service advisor to say, hey, listen, I can't let you know how we're doing with the service and MOT at the moment because they're just underway. But as part of that, the first thing we do is that complimentary vehicle health check. I'm sure we'll get all the other work done, but let me just run you through that. And rather than the word found, I would change that for discovered. And the reason I would use it for discovered is we tend to stroll across things that we discover are things like a beauty spot, or we weren't looking for them in the first place, okay? But when we've put our keys down in the house and we've lost them, we go looking for them. When we've got them, we find those items. So it's, a little nuance on the words, but I think it's really quite important how you get yourself into using those words and keep using those words that will help you just that little bit. It's, it's small margins, but it all helps to give the customer the chance to make an informed decision.
And again, you're using Andy, the technician. Are you recommending using Andy's name?
Yeah, 100%. Use your technician's name. Okay, your technicians are people in this that have the credibility. Okay, that's what your customer's paying for. It would have to be said, most customers for the last sort of 10 years have seen our role as a service advisor as a sales role, because we're always talking to them about extra items, buying things and bits and pieces like that. So it's more seen as a sales role than perhaps even a salesman now in many instances. What we need to do is use the technician's credibility that he's the guy, and Andy's had a look at this, and in his professional opinion, that's what they've paid for. This is what he recommends is done. So yeah, I'd always use technicians.
Okay, so what about amber work? Okay, let's say brakes. I don't know. They're 69% worn. They're coming up to 70% worn or something like that. How do you recommend communicating that to the customer?
Well, let's do one right from the top again, and I think that's probably the best way to explain it, and we'll do the brakes as part of that. So if I just picked up the phone, hi Simon, it's Darren calling from XXX Motors. Just to run through with you, just to put your mind at rest, we're on board with the service and the MOT. Andy's working away on those two for you. As we thought when he did the complimentary vehicle health check, most of the items there, they're green, they're good to go. Hey, listen, there's a couple of amber items. It's your tyres that I'll talk to you about when you come down. The most important one is that red tyre at the front there. You've worn it down from 2.8 millimeters to 1.6. Doesn't mean a lot to most of my customers, but it's less than the thickness of a credit card. Great news is Andy can get that done and fitted today while the vehicle's on the ramp. Shall I go ahead and get Andy to do that work for you? Yeah? Okay, fine. Right, I've got one other thing to speak to you about, Simon. It's nice and easy. One of the other tyre on the other side, actually, sorry, you said brakes, didn't you?
We can use brakes, Brakes at 69% worn or something like that.
Brakes at 69%. The other thing I've got to talk to you about, Simon, is the brakes at 69% on the front there. Now, you've got two choices. It's really entirely down to you. With the vehicle on the ramps, we can get those done for you today, and it'll cost you £175. What that means is you won't need to come into us in between services. Okay, so you're good to go. The other way we can do it is we can put the car back together. What I do need you just to pay attention to, though, is those are going to wear out at a period. And what we definitely don't want is costly metal to metal. So you'll need to keep an eye on them and get it into us quickly when they need doing. So which one suits you better, Simon? Would you rather take it as it is now and run it for a little while, we'll come back in, or would you rather we get it done now while it's on the ramps and Andy can get them sorted so you don't have to come back and see us?
Yeah, give the customer choice. So it's something that's not going to make it to the next scheduled service. Uh,
Absolutely. It's 100% the customer's choice. Now, the beauty of doing it that way is those people who the inconvenience is coming to you as a service department who instantly go, do you know what? I'd much rather get them done now are going to take that path. The people that want to squeeze the toothpaste up the wall maybe and get the last little part out of that are going to continue to drive that vehicle. But you've given them sufficient explanation and warning of what we want to avoid. And again, people respond to that. You know, this guy's not tried to push stuff on me. He's given me my choice. If I make the decision, then that decision's got to be right.
yeah.
So that will be what my push as far as Amber was concerned. It's customer driven choice really on those sorts of items.
Yeah, okay. And again, I'm like the idea that it's Andy is recommending it.
Mm.
Andy is the guy that's doing it.
Yeah, it's what we, you know, what our customers have paid for is that expert advice of what's the best method to keep this going. It's a bit like when you get your boiler serviced at home. You know, you're paying for that guy to come out and have a look at it and to tell you. Now, some of that maintenance there is going to be stuff that needs to be done, and some of it's going to be what I would call preventative maintenance. We're going to change that just because there's a potential that it might fail at a certain period, or a bit like an old air filter. You know, it never got to a certain degree of grey that you matched it and went, oh, yeah, that one's finished. We changed them at a prescripted time because we knew that they deteriorated.
Okay. So what advice do you have for someone when you look at the vehicle health check and it's a sea of red? Can I, when I was sitting on the counter as a service advisor, I know I've personally made a decision for the customer because there's a sea of red
Yeah.
thinking this is going to hurt. Look at the age of the car. They're not going to want to do this. Do you have any advice for someone like me or a service advisor thinking, how do I deal with the sea of
Yeah.
red?
So I think there's a couple of things. As a service advisor, we've already said about other stuff, and red works exactly the same. You've got to be 100% confident about it.
Mm.
So, and the reason why I say that is I tend to find sometimes people going, oh, we're doing a manufacturer's recall. We're seeing people that haven't been into us for 7 years, you know, and Andy, the technician's marked everything in red. And so, and probably rightly so, but you need to prioritize some of that red stuff. You know, if it's a piece of trim red work or something that's, you know, sticking out, if it's dangerous or something, then that's a different degree. But if it's non-urgent um, red, I would say, which is almost a contradiction in terms, but I'm sure you service advisors will know exactly what I'm talking about there, then you need to make sure the vehicle health check reflects the vehicle and what the conversations that you're going to have. The second thing I think you need to do is look at that and decide how you're going to deliver it, in what order. The third thing I talked about earlier, which is go for an acceptance on each of those items. So don't wait till the whole list before. So present your item. Would you like me to get Andy to do that or not? Well, let me just hear the next one. Okay, well, then you can go on and do the next one. But in most cases, if you push that person for an answer, they'll give you an either a yes or a no there and then on that particular item. And if you've kind of prioritized it as the most urgent, then, you know, you should be part of the way there. The other piece of advice I'd give you, and this comes from doing it many times in the past, just check the vehicle history, okay, before you go and do it. Because I've seen service advisors sometimes a bit of a quivering wreck in that scenario where there's lots of red work on there. But then when we've gone and look at the previous services, they've gone in for 2 or maybe 3 services and just literally had 2 or 3 services and no other expenditure. So again, when I'm having that conversation with you, Simon, if I'm then saying, hey, listen, I know there seems to be a few items on there this time, but if we look at that over the whole life cost of the time that you've had the car, it actually isn't that much at all. It's just one of those things. They've happened at the same time period. It's a lot more palatable for a customer then to go, actually, do you know what? He's right. You know, I've had 3 services and not paid anything other than the service bill. It's kind of, you know, it's kind of likely that something would come up across that period, and it makes it a little bit more palatable.
But
Um,
again, that is why it's so important for service advisors to have the previous vehicle health check. Just have that there when they book it
Absolutely.
in. Because how often have you and I seen tires grow in a dealership? And they absolutely do. And what we mean
They
by
do.
that,
Yeah.
people listen to this. Someone comes in and the tire's got 2.5 mils on it. The service advisor tries to sell the tire, sorry, I should say.
Mm.
And the customer says, no, I'll leave it. The car comes back 2 weeks later. A different technician does a vehicle health check, and suddenly it's got 2.8 or 3 millimeters on it. Of
Yeah.
course, how silly does it look? But the other thing I love about the previous vehicle health check, when I have the conversation, hey, Mr. Bedford, last time we said that the XYZ was amber. What I'll do is make sure we get Andy to have a look at this time. The call now is, you're
Yeah.
right. You're right. It is time to do that. It is time to get that air condition serviced.
And again, going back to that sort of work, that's the work that's going to increase the time that that vehicle's on the ramps for you. And you get back to that situation where we have, the right number of cars coming in, spending the right amount of time being worked on, which makes us more efficient as a result of it. So it's really, really important work. The pre-planning, the pre-work now is as important as anything that happens on the day, but it's always the first part that gets dropped when a site gets busy. I haven't had
Yeah.
time to do the pre-calls. I haven't had time to print the
Yeah.
vehicle health checks off. The preparation side is the side that goes. And what then happens is you enter into a period where it just goes faster and faster and faster. And the hope of getting to doing those robust systems looks further and further away.
True. So, any tips or advice you want to leave for a service manager, listen to this, that they can go back and put in this week in their dealership? Any just one nugget, one idea they can go back and put in place?
For definite, I would say from a service manager's perspective, make sure your vehicle health check explanations are happening at the morning drop off. We're making a clear explanation to all the customers of how this process is going to work. Because if you're second facing that information as well, you'll find it so much easier if the customer clearly knows how that's been categorized as work. The second thing I do is just inspect what you expect, really.
Mm.
And that's listen to, not intimidating, not standing over somebody while they're making it, but just observe and listen to the calls that are going on when people talk about red work. Because I've met some really gifted service advisors that can explain that situation, can go through all the sorts of stuff that we're talking about, but sometimes get to the end and just go,
Yeah. Yep.
and of course, that's not going to get you an answer. Sometimes the dreaded or word creeps in as well. So, would you like
Yeah.
me to get Andy to fit that for you? Or, and of
Or
course, the minute
not.
you,
Yes.
or, yeah, it's, or, okay, I'll leave it. So, would you like me just to go ahead and get Andy to put that on while it's on the ramps? And then
Yep.
you're quiet, and the option is for the
I,
customer
I
then
I
to
love the one. I love the one I use lots. Do you understand why Andy recommends getting that fixed? Great. Listen, I'll get Andy to do that, and he'll be around later on this afternoon for a more detailed explanation if you need.
yeah,
I just love that as something professional. Now, listen, you teach so many different ways to ask for the business on today's Service Advisor. Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
the tip I'm going to leave, and we'll talk about what we're going to do on the next one,
Yeah.
for someone listening to this, is the phrase "promise me." If someone
Yes.
leaves air conditioning servicing, if someone leaves tires, anything, just turn around and say, hey, Mr. Customer, would you do me a favor? Even if we don't do that tire, the brakes, the whatever, would you promise me you get that tire changed between now and the end of the week? You're just doubling your braking distance on wet road. I think promise me takes it right out of a sales pitch
Yeah.
into something that's so personal. Now, of course,
Yeah.
don't just leave it there. Okay. Otherwise, they say, yeah, okay, I will go and do it. But actually, on this occasion, why don't we see if we can match that quick fit price? Or on this occasion, why don't I speak to my service manager and see if we can do it for X amount because it's on the ramps? Okay. Promise me, that's my tip. I'd love people to go back and try.
Yeah, I think we definitely want the human part of it. People love that part of, there's a course to go through. We've explained all those sorts of things. But if it was important and it was urgent that somebody did something about that tire, which it is, when you put the human element in there of, listen, if you don't get it done here, promise me, it just builds those immense levels of trust that actually this work does need doing.
Mm.
This guy's interested in me as an individual and my health and safety and all of those sorts of things. Let me have a recheck. And you've got to bear in mind people live very busy lives. Also, people, just about everything that they go and purchase these days has them on sale. And so we become a little bit kind of, maybe we prevent listening to the full explanation because we're expecting that person to sell us something else. Had a recent event with a very quick one, Simon, but with a windscreen, damaged windscreen, had to go back to a center because it couldn't come out because of the ADAS systems. It had to be recalibrated and all of the rest of it. But while it's in there and you're booking it in to go to one of these centers, they want to sell you wiper blades. Okay, because obviously the glass is broken. There's a chance that there's glass in there that's going to then scratch the next day. And also, while it's there, we do a treatment that we can put over the window, which will bead the rain, make the rain come off the windscreen. And these are all optional things that you can purchase when you're getting your windscreen done. Now, on the basis, most of us have it on insurance, and you pay a little bit of money just for, £70 or whatever it is to get your windscreen replaced. These other options are now bolted onto it. And when you think about these things, so many people ask it, it's actually cutting through that. You have to keep that in mind. If so many people are trying to sell bits on top that, let's say they need to be done or they could be considered to be done, the stuff we're talking about is red work. It needs to be done for the good of their vehicle. You've got to cut through that fact that customer's used to people asking them for stuff. You've got to clearly explain why this actually is different to that. It needs to be done.
It's the grandmother rule. If your grandmother was buying this car, would you insist this work was done to the car before she bought it? If it's a yes, you've got a right to offer it. You really do that. Listen, we've talked about the booking, okay, or the pre-call, okay, because some people have that. Big centres have a booking department that does it, so we have to make sure we do the pre-call. We then talked about when they drop the car off to make sure that we set the agenda on the vehicle health check. Yep. Today, we've talked about and we've touched on upselling and making that call. Okay. Yeah. Next stage has to be when they're picking the car up.
Absolutely. When we're handing the car back, we're building value in that whole process. And, I just reiterate what you said. We scratched the surface in this little session that we've done here on how you could present stuff and what you could talk about. So.
Yeah. Again, if people want more of this, our Today Service Advisor, our online training program through the Sales Fitness program, people have access to that, which is nice and cheap and easy. It's $299 per service advisor, or get on one of our Today Service Advisor training programs. But listen, thank you very much. And we're going to talk about next time, dropping the car off there and making sure that the selling doesn't finish once someone said yes. So we'll see you then.
Great. Thanks, Simon.
Thanks for that. That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, simcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn.